Who is it who will end the cycle of hate? Last night I was, hard to say, involved in a conversation, for I was merely listening, for I knew my words would fall on deaf ears, but I was listening to a conversation and the question was asked, would you fight for this country? And I live in the United States, and the answer to me is simple. No, I would not. And obviously, fight as in war. And I didn't say this because I know it would fall on deaf ears, but who plans on ending the cycle of hate? War and all these acts of violence do nothing. Revenge, they do nothing to end the cycle of hate. And nobody seems to want to end the cycle of hate. And people think if you say you don't want to fight, you're a tree hugger or something of that nature. But these people are so foolish. They don't see how much harder it is not to fight than it is to fight. Fighting is natural. It's a beastly, animalistic instinct. But peace is a divine instinct, one that does not come easy to our beastly nature, but feels so right to our human nature, for our human nature is half divine and half beast. And everyone talks about peace, a better tomorrow, this, that, and the other, but no one's willing to be the one who ends the cycle of hate. No one's willing to not take revenge. No one's willing to, turn the cheek. And that's why the cycle of hate will never end until somebody decides on a scale at which all see the cycle of hate must end, or man will end, because we are far too advanced at this point. We are far too dangerous to keep playing this game of eye for an eye. We act like eye for an eye was something that the the brutes, the barbarians of the past did, but we still do it today. You know, I think we we're so foolish in thinking that we are somehow at the pinnacle of kindness, of peace, of understanding, when we would call the things that took place just 100 years ago barbaric. And then if you go to the 1900s and you ask them how it was 100 years ago, they would say the 1800s were barbaric, and the 1800s would say the 1700s were barbaric, and so on and so forth. Each man is always looked back and could easily see how twisted and wrong they were, but in the moment they think they are somehow above that, somehow no longer partake in these animalistic things. And it's extremely sad. I believe that one day, I believe one day men will look back on the 2000s and they will say, they used to, they used to eat animals. How crazy is that? Now, I just had some steak, so I'm not saying I'm. I mean, yeah, point made. But I do think that's the way humans are evolving to. We are becoming more and more understanding of the pain of other people, other beings, other things. And I'm not even a very Eastern person. Like, I don't really take a Eastern view on really anything. I'm Western philosophy outlook mostly. But I do think that that is the way that we are going. And I do think that, in the future will be. Sorry, a car just drove by and took me off my train of thought. But I think the next step is because, a lot of people are becoming, vegetarian. And, you'll talk to you'll talk to a vegetarian who says that they're vegetarian for the ethics of it, how cruel it is to kill animals. And as they are saying that, they will completely obliterate the mosquito on their arm. And this is a double standard. That is an animal as well. But my point is that we are closer. That is the next step, I think, which isn't the point of this video. It's just me making an observation that, there's a good amount of protein and it's meat and insects. So I think that is the next step. We'll eat insects instead of, bigger animals. We already don't eat huge animals because we think it's wrong. And I think we'll slowly, slowly move away from that, and then we'll eat insects because even the vegetarians who don't eat animals for ethical reasons will kill bugs and not eat them, which is, I mean, obvious, but at least when you kill an animal and you eat it, it's not just a complete and utter waste. At least it's giving energy to something. But killing a fly for just being around, being near you is, essentially like game, like you're like hunting game because you're not eating it. Um, but that's kind of against the point. I kind of just thought of that. The main point is that someone has to end the cycle of hate. I guess I didn't really never hammer home that point because my whole idea was that all these people just are so zealous for no reason. Go to war for their country when they don't even believe what they're going to war for. They don't even know what they're going to war for. And when you go to war, you're not fighting. You're never really fighting the ideology that you're fighting. You're fighting some person who was told, just as you were told, that your livelihood was at stake. That so and so across the water was going to come here, was going to flip your life upside down, take your wife, take your kids, and destroy your world. So you went to fight for it. And if you ask the other guy, he would say the same thing. So you're on the battlefield with just a bunch of people who are fighting for their family, their wives, their kids, and it's just the higher ups, the bureaucracy, the top percentile who is playing these games that you don't even understand. You don't even know what the war is really about. It's just for these higher ups, and a lot of times it's probably just money, power. It's always power. In the Iliad, in Troy, the Trojan War, if you've recently seen the Odyssey, then you know that, Odysseus, he didn't want to go, but he knew that Agamemnon wouldn't let it go. He didn't care that his brother's wife was taken from him. He didn't care. It was his excuse to go to war with Troy because Troy had too much power and he wanted the power and he saw that he could take it and he had an excuse to do it. He had to defend his brother's honor. So he took it. But all the people that died in the Trojan War, Hector just wanted to protect his livelihood. You know, so many people were just, and then Odysseus, he didn't want to go, but he didn't want his kid to die, or be taken away, or his wife, so he went to war. And that's just what it always seems like war is. The people who are dying are never the people who really want what comes to pass. They just want family, peace, serenity, tranquility, happiness. My whole point, though, is that someone has to end the cycle of hate. A whole generation has to end the cycle of hate, or it's never going to end. Atrocities are always committed because someone committed an atrocity. It's like, when are you just going to not fight fire with fire? It's so trite to say that we shouldn't fight fire with fire, but what do we do? What does everybody do? They fight fire with fire because they believe that they're weak if they don't. They believe that they'll lose their honor. They'll have no one will respect them if they don't fight fire with fire. And it's so sad. And you'd think that at this point, with all we've built, with all we've written, with all we've read, with all we've come to understand, we'd understand that fact. Christianity is the leading religion in the world. And Jesus never lifted a finger. Jesus never killed anybody. Jesus never hurt anybody. And yet, somehow these Christians believe the answer is death. Your own God, they never killed anybody. But for some reason you think you have the right? That you're fighting for justice? That you're somehow a extremely moral and ethical being who knows right or wrong on a universal scale, who just has the power, has the authority to take life justly? You're a fool. And you'll be forgiven. And though I'm not a Christian, I do believe God will forgive us all. But you're a fool. Christians have been looking up to a man who who never laid a finger on anyone for 2,000 years. And they've called countless crusades. They've killed millions of people. And I'm not saying Christians are horrible people. I think Christianity is probably the best religion. But it's sad because it's the best religion, it's the best ethic that humanity's ever stood to, and it still falls so short of anything respectable. And yes, you can say, well, if no one's ever, no, you can say what Nietzsche said. There was one Christian, and he died on the cross. And that's true. There's only one man that's upheld the Christian morality, and that's Jesus. But it's like these people don't even try. And we should say what we ought to do, not what we do, or we would never grow. But It's just, it's sad. It's just sad. So I will strive to always end the cycle of hate. And I hope you do the same. I hope you don't give in to revenge, to vengeance. As it is written, vengeance will be mine, do not repay. Vengeance being God. We could have we could end the cycle of hate. We could have heaven on earth. But you gotta look in the mirror and you gotta end it in your own life. And you gotta realize that you'll probably die. You probably will die if you don't fight fire with fire. But imagine how great this world would be today if the people who are dead right now, who had to be dead for the year 2000 to come about, weren't so obsessed with another 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and they took one for the team of humanity and allowed the cycle of hate to end, at least in one area, in one life. We'd be that much closer.